Good morning. Blind Bartimaeus receives his sight. Mark was the first to write an account of Jesus' life. And in his gospel, he stresses actions, he stresses facts about Jesus. He doesn't deal with themes and topics, it's all about what Jesus did. And he shows Jesus to be a man of action and a man of authority. 1/3 of his gospel deals with Jesus' last week on earth. So it's packed with action. So Bartimaeus receives his sight. Bar means son of, as in bar mitzvah, son of the commandment. Timaeus was his father, so Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus. You've all heard that expression, none so blind as those that don't want to see, don't you? And the world is full of people who don't want to face up to things, don't want to face the truth. And it's not just physical blindness on their part, it's emotional blindness, or it's inconvenient. But it's like an actual form of blindness. People refuse to acknowledge who God is, who Jesus is. They refuse to acknowledge the truth. They've heard the truth. And even then, when we're talking about here, when Jesus was walking the earth, there were people who chose to ignore it. And there were people who refused to not open their eyes to the reality of God, the reality of Jesus. They can see perfectly, but choose not to do so. And in some ways, it's only Jesus that can open those eyes. It's only Jesus that can make that difference. So in this text, we see that Bartimaeus is physically blind. May well have been blind from birth. We don't know. We don't know how old he was. But what we do know is that medical availability in those days was pretty limited. And if you were blind from birth, the chances are that you were going to remain blind from, until you died. So there was no cure for Bartimaeus. This is life. This is how life would be for him. And when you're in that situation, how can you see? Well, the answer is you can't. There's nothing anyone can do for you. His world was darkness. He couldn't see his parents. He couldn't see his brothers and sisters if he had any. He couldn't see where he was at any time. He couldn't see the beauty of creation. All he could focus on was total darkness and feeling his way around so that he didn't get hurt. And that blindness dictated his life. Every aspect of his life would be centered around him being blind and how can I cope with this? And so, like a lot of people who were disabled in some way, he became a beggar. But as a beggar, he could earn a wage, couldn't he? He lived. He depended on the generosity of people who passed by. He depended on the generosity of those who felt sorry for him and had sympathy. But he had no ambitions. He had no plans for his life. There's no, well, next year I'm going to do this, or next month I'm going to go here, or something like that. His life centered around each day begging and getting enough money to buy food to survive another day. And that was his life. But at least he had a wage. At least he was better off than some people because he was still eating. But this is almost a picture of people who don't know God, isn't it? Stumbling around in the darkness, hoping for the best. Uncertain. Uncertainty fills the life because they don't know. What's going to happen tomorrow? Oh, it'll be all right. Well, maybe it won't. People hope for the best, but without any certainty of what's happening in life. 2 Corinthians 4. The God of this age, the enemy, has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Talks about people who are lost, who are essentially beggars, who need the salvation that they can't do for themselves. So Bartimaeus is by the road begging, and he hears a commotion that's going on around him. And we have to assume that he's heard about Jesus and has heard about this man from Nazareth who can heal. He goes around performing wonderful miracles. He's never met Jesus, but believes he can help him. Otherwise, why would he call out to him? He believes that Jesus can do something for him. He called out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on him, on me. The crowd said, shut up. There's more going on here that's more important than you. Just sit there and be quiet. Maybe we'll give you something later. Because Bartimaeus is unimportant. He's just a beggar. He's just a blind beggar who has no importance in life, and one day he won't be there because he's died, because he didn't get enough to eat. But Bartimaeus persisted. That's a lesson to us all as well, isn't it? Persistence. Keeping on, carrying on when things get rough. He persisted because he knew he had one chance only to see Jesus. Or why bother to try? He was determined to do all that he could to speak to Jesus. So he made a nuisance of himself. Again, it's us, hopeless beggars. Blind until Jesus passes by, until Jesus speaks to us. Now, in my case, I've heard about Jesus. I've heard about the miracles, but I'd never called out. I was like a lot of people, stumbling around in the darkness. The world promises all sorts of things, doesn't it? The world tells us it will fill all our needs and do everything for us, but it doesn't. We need God. We need Jesus in our lives to get through, to combat that darkness. People will tell you that believing in God and having faith is for wimps, for weak people, for people that can't get through life without a crutch. But I would tell you that it takes a lot of guts to admit that you can't get by without God in your life. To tell people, yeah, okay, I need God in my life. I need Jesus in my life. Because I can't do it by myself. So we come to Bartimaeus. And we read a bit of Isaiah 55. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Which was relevant in this case. Call on him while he is near. Bartimaeus knew he probably would not get another chance. Jesus heard his cry in the same way that he hears your cry and everybody else's cry. And in the same way that he always has time for you, he had time for Bartimaeus. He was concerned about Bartimaeus and what Bartimaeus wanted. Now, can you imagine Bartimaeus' joy when he was taken to see Jesus? He would have had to have, maybe people led him there. Or maybe he had to fumble his way there because the crowd were pretty unsympathetic. We don't know. But there's no point in Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection if he's got no time for you. It was just a pointless exercise, wasn't it? He's got to have that time for you afterwards. You may think that your sin and what's going on in your life is too great, but that's not true. You may say, there can be no forgiveness for me because I've done so much, I've got so many things wrong. That's not true. You may say, I've had a really bad week and I've let myself down. We all do that from time to time. And so what? Jesus forgives. Again, there is no point in the crucifixion, the resurrection, and Jesus' love for you if there is no forgiveness. We may well be disappointed with ourselves and ashamed. But what does Jesus say? Yeah, I know, he says, I know. When we tell him, he knows. And he'll say, let's talk about it. Tell me. And then let's make this a good day. Let's make this a better day and make it a better future. So Bartimaeus is facing Jesus. And Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? And this I find particularly interesting because Bartimaeus could have said, I'm a beggar, what do you think I want? I want money. I want money. This is my life. I'm a beggar. I want money. What else could you give me? But he didn't. He wanted something else. He said, I want to see. He was saying, I don't want to carry on like this. I want to see the light. I don't want this darkness in my life anymore. I want the light. I want something else. I want something better, and I want something different than life has got for me at the moment. And that's the same as us. Because we know that only Jesus can offer us that light to take us out of that darkness. He wanted physical healing, much more than something material. And he wanted that through faith. Because he knew that only Jesus could do that. Jesus says, your faith has healed you. And that faith makes a difference. If he hadn't had that faith, would he have been healed? What do you think? We'll never know, but I don't think he would. He persisted, didn't he? He carried on, carrying on, calling out to Jesus because he knew that Jesus could do something for him. And he didn't want money. He wanted something different. He didn't want material things. He wanted light. He wanted to see. He wanted a different world. And it's the same as our persistence when we continue to pray and pray and pray. When life isn't going well, when life isn't going right, we continue to pray. And it's that faith that ultimately gets you an answer to those prayers. Faith makes the difference. Amen. Love makes the difference. Light into darkness makes a huge difference. So, how is your vision today? Are we looking through the eyes of someone who has faith, or are we blind to what's going on around us? People will say, what's the point? It's only a set of rules and regulations. That's what religion is. But we don't want religion, do we? We want Jesus. We want that love. Jesus isn't about religion and rituals, rules. Our blindness, we all had it before we knew Jesus. And it was a wonderful day when Jesus shone that light into our lives and made that difference. It was a wonderful day when Jesus made a commitment to us in the same way that we make a commitment to him. It was only by faith and compassion that Bartimaeus was healed. It's only by faith, love and compassion that we are saved. By Jesus. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He said that in John 14 verse 6. And that's true. The world will tell you there are so many ways if you want to have a relationship with God. There's so many ways you can do it. Through this, do that. Lead a good life. You know, don't murder anyone. Don't steal. Have a good life. That's not the way. We have to know Jesus. We have to have Jesus in our lives. We have to have that light shining in our lives, combating the darkness that only the world can put on us. Bartimaeus received a miracle that day because of his faith. Imagine his life after he could see. How did he get home? It says he followed Jesus afterwards. Yeah? So Jesus was leaving the city. But I would imagine that that Bartimaeus had to go home. So how did he find his way home? He could see all these things around him. He didn't know them. All the people around them, he didn't know them. Only by their voices. But it was through that love. He must have been amazed that he could see, be able to touch things and know what they were, and find his way home afterwards. Thank you for listening. This is the difference that God can make, that Jesus can make in our lives, when he shines that light and we can see the truth, we can see the love. It all comes back to Jesus in the end. Amen. Amen. Thank you.